Hello YouTubers, sorry it's been a while since I've done any embroidery related videos, but I've had all sorts of technical issues and time with Christmas and New Year has been against me, and I've spent some quality time with the family. So we're back to it now. Hopefully I'll upload a bit more regularly from now on. Today I'm going to do a video that's been requested by a subscriber, and she wants to know how to hoop t-shirts for embroidery. So I've got a couple of different types of t-shirt here. I've got the polo, which is sort of that, do you call it Airtex? I'm not sure, but it's that textured kind of cotton with the 2-button placket. And then I've got a normal thin cotton t-shirt. Both of these are cheap brands. They're not special in any way. The automatic reaction is that you can't embroider on this because it's so thin. You can probably see my hand through there, but you won't get the best results because at the end of the day it's a cheap garment. This is much better. This holds up a lot better to embroidery, but what we're going to do is do a double layer, and we'll get cracking now and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so this is everything you're going to need. You've obviously got your t-shirt or top. We're going to do the polo one first, that you're going to embroider on. Then you need the hoop for your embroidery machine. I'm going to do it on my multi-needle, so this is the kind of hoop that uses. And I'm going to do left breast. That is the most popular placement for embroidery. And I wouldn't go larger than 4x4 for that area, because you haven't literally got much room for manoeuvre. This is a size medium. Obviously if you go bigger, large, extra large, double XL, etc., you have more distance between the placket and the sleeve, so there is more room for a design, but we'll talk about that when we actually come to hoop. Okay, so we've got the hoop for your machine. We need a pin. That will become clear later. And you can either use chalk for marking your placement, or this. Now I call it friction. I don't know whether it's pronounced friction. I think I've mentioned it in videos before. But it's made by Pilot, and it looks like just a regular ballpoint pen. But you can actually remove it either by friction, by rubbing it, which I've not had the best results with, to be fair, or iron it and the mark disappears. So although it's scary the first time you do it, it does work, I promise. And I got this for, I think it's €3 locally. So not expensive, but a great tool to have. That is my preferred choice, but sometimes with the dark colour, you can't always see it against a dark background. So I would use tailor's chalk. That's a little fraction of it because it shatters when I chuck it in my box and whatnot, but it works just the same. So we'll use those as we go along. Obviously the stabiliser. Now when it comes to stabiliser, the rule of thumb is if you wear it, so the garment, if you wear it, don't tear it. So this is not tearaway stabiliser, this is cutaway. It feels more like cotton. So at the end of the embroidery, we're not going to just tear it off the back. We're going to cut round the design and leave this in place, because the stitches will need support throughout washing. And a ruler. I'm using my quilter's ruler because it's nice and long. It's got a lovely straight edge. Right, let's get cracking. So we lay our t-shirt out flat. So the rule of thumb, my rule of thumb, because I've done quite a bit of research on this when I first started doing t-shirts, is the design centre, and that's what we're going to mark up, the centre of the design, goes midway between the sleeve and the centre of the placket. So I use the centre of the button as a guideline. But there's a couple of times where that may not be the ideal placement, and that could be for an extra large shirt, because bear in mind when this is being worn, this gets tucked around the side. Okay, so you don't want the design under somebody's armpit. So you just have to bear in mind the size of it. A medium's absolutely fine. It should sit on the front of the shoulders and not have too much tucking around there. And then I always do the centre lined to the bottom of a 2-button placket. If it's a 3-button or a full dress down shirt, it's going to be different. But at the end of the day, your eye is always best. Although I do use measuring tools, if I measure it and it's sort of down here, because that follows my rules, I know that's not right, and I'll think, okay, let's take a step back, look at it, it needs to be around there. Okay? So we've measured that part there between the narrowest point, and we know it's 8 1/4. So midway between that would be 4 1/8. This doesn't measure 8, so I'm just going to eyeball that 1/8. So then we come down to the bottom of the placket, which is where we want our centre point to be, and we measure. That would be our spot, our centre spot. So 4 1/4 or 4 1/8 to the centre is on the corner of the ruler there. So we just take the ruler over, draw a nice long line. Sometimes you have to hold the fabric, otherwise it sort of ruches up. Do it a few times, make sure you get a nice line you can see. Check your 4 1/4, 4 1/8, beg your pardon, 4 1/8 from the bottom. You can do it with a tape measure, you don't need to have a quilter's ruler. I'm just going to elongate those lines to make sure we can see exactly what we're doing in the hoop. And they're going to get ironed away, so don't worry at all. Make sure we've got... Also, the other thing I meant to mention was when it comes to placement, one thing was if it was an extra large shirt, then the centre point might be too far over, so you might want to come in towards the centre a little bit more. And the other thing is for a lady. Now, if you know the lady that's going to wear it, I know it sounds a bit odd, but check out her boobs. If she's got big boobs, that's the t-shirt has got to go round them. So again, you could end up with the design under her arm rather than on the top. If she's not got big boobs, not so much of an issue. Okay, but if you don't know, then you don't have that information, then go with this method. Okay, so that's our central point, that point there. I'm going to pop a pin in there, and you'll see why in a second. I want to mark that centre point. And then we're going to turn the shirt inside out. And then we bring over our square of stabiliser, making sure that it's bigger than the hoop that you're using. Mine is in all directions, that's absolutely fine. I've cut this off a big sheet. I bought it in sort of 10 metres long section. So, okay, so we place it, there's the pin, because otherwise we won't be able to see the markings from the reverse side. Place the pin roughly in the centre of the stabiliser. Okay, and then what I like to do, I've never heard of anybody do this before, but I do because I just find it easier, is get some of this magic tape or scotch tape and tape it down. And you'll see why in a minute. Okay, make sure it's flat, that's really important, make sure it's flat, apart from that pin obviously is the bump. Okay, like that. And when you're happy that that's secure and it's covering the centre of the pin, which is just there, we've got plenty of room around it, we're going to turn the shirt back through. And I would always do this where possible with the buttons done up, because it keeps the shape of the shirt. Okay, and now this is where we bring in the hoop. So you've got the bottom of the hoop and the top. Slide the bottom into your shirt, making sure it goes between the stabiliser and the back of the shirt. And can you see, if we had to take that stabiliser down, it could get caught up at the bottom, folded, moved around, budged up, and believe me, I've done this hundreds of times without much joy. So I get it in a roughly central position, and then I take my top hoop, let's zoom in slightly so you can see. Okay, take my top hoop and just lay it gently in the bottom hoop. Okay, so I'm looking at these lines here, and I need the top line to hit that arrow or the centre mark of the hoop, the bottom to do the same at the bottom, and then the horizontal lines to hit this arrow or notch here and here. So I need to go up with my hoop or down with my shirt, either way, until that hits there, and then we need to go that way slightly. So you're lining it up. Some people use the grid, you know, the grid that comes with your hoop. You can lay the grid in there and line the lines up with the grid, but I don't find it's necessary because you've got these central markings on your hoop. So I need to go quite a way that way. So the top one's absolutely fine, bottom one's good. Make sure what you're doing is you're not just stretching the t-shirt for that to hit the point. You're actually moving the whole of the fabric and not just stretching one area. So that's not too far off at all. I'm quite happy with that. So we can take the pin off and lift the shirt up, making sure that it's caught all the way around, it's nice and flat. Just check at the back just to double check that stabiliser, and there you are. You take that to your embroidery machine and you're good to go. And now when it comes to this t-shirt here, you haven't got the placket as a guideline. So what you would do is take your shoulder sleeves, seams, fold it in half. Again, we'd get rid of that. I'd press that to give that a good iron so you've got a central point of the shirt which acts like your placket. And then exactly the same theory applies. You would measure from here to the narrowest point of the sleeve seam, and that would be your centre point vertically. Now when it comes to doing the horizontal line, it's a bit of guesswork, I'm afraid. There's some tables out there or some guidelines on the internet to how far down the shoulder it should come, but when I've used them it's always been a little bit too high. So I would eyeball it, maybe even match it up against the polo that we've just done. I would say somewhere around here. Preference, it really is personal preference. And then the only difference with this shirt is a double layer of stabiliser. So when you're taping that stabiliser on the back, use 2 layers to make sure it's really nice and stable and it's not going to stretch out of shape. Okay, I hope that was informative for you. If you've got any questions, give me a shout. I don't pretend to be professional. This is just me learning as I go. So if you've got any better tips or tricks that you could share, give me a shout. Thanks ever so much. Take care. See you next time.